The chandeliers of the Magnolia Grand Ballroom burned like captured stars, their gold light spilling over 130 guests dressed in silk, velvet, and money. Laughter rippled through the air, the soft jazz band playing a love song too smooth to be real. The night was supposed to be perfect, a celebration of love, family, and beginnings. But for Aurelia Holt, it would be remembered for a single moment that tore her world apart. Aurelia stood near the dessert table, elegant in a pale silver gown that glimmered softly beneath the lights. Her hair, a crown of natural silver curls, framed a face that carried decades of quiet strength. She had smiled through every photograph, every toast, every polite conversation. She had clapped when the couple danced their first dance. She had swallowed every small humiliation her daughter-in-law had thrown at her since morning. Because that's what mothers do. They choose peace, even when it costs them pride. But peace shattered the moment Brielle Carter turned, her diamond earrings flashing, her voice rising over the music. "Where are my keys, Miss Holt?" The question floated across the ballroom. The saxophone faltered. Guests looked up from their plates. A photographer froze mid-snap. Aurelia blinked, unsure she had heard right. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, what keys?" "The apartment keys," Brielle said again, this time louder. "You said you'd give them to me today." A murmur rolled through the room like low thunder. All eyes turned to Malik Holt, the groom, Aurelia's only son. But Malik didn't move. His jaw was tight, his hand gripping his champagne flute so hard his knuckles whitened. He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at his wife. He stared straight ahead, silent. "Brielle," Aurelia began carefully, trying to steady her voice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The sound came before the sentence ended. Slap. It echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Aurelia's head turned with the blow, her body swaying as one hand instinctively flew to her cheek. Gasps filled the silence that followed. A woman in the front row let out a soft scream. The jazz band stopped completely. Brielle stood over her, eyes blazing, her tone sharp as cut glass. "Don't play dumb with me. You promised Malik and me those keys. That apartment is ours now. You said after the wedding you'd hand them over. You think I don't remember?" Aurelia's voice cracked but stayed calm. "That home is mine, Brielle." "I never— Yours?" Brielle laughed, loud and cruel. "You don't even need it." "You're old. You should be in one of those senior condos or something. Why hold on to something that belongs to your son's future?" Malik shifted, still silent. His eyes, the same warm brown that used to light up whenever he looked at his mother, were empty now, hollowed by something Aurelia didn't want to name. Tears burned the back of her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She straightened her back, smoothing her trembling hand down the front of her gown. "Brielle," she said softly, "you're drunk on more than champagne. I think we should—" Brielle stepped closer, voice low but venomous. "You think you're better than me, don't you? You think because you raised him alone, you get to keep everything he could have built with me. Well, you don't. Hand me those keys." Aurelia looked around. Not one person moved to help her. Not one friend, not even her son. Every face she saw was frozen in shock, discomfort, or curiosity. No one brave enough to intervene. The cameras were still filming, the whispers already beginning to ripple through the crowd. She turned to Malik. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but disbelief. "Malik, say something." He swallowed hard, his lips parting, but no words came out. His silence was the final betrayal. Brielle smirked. "See, even he knows it's true. Give me the keys, Miss Holt. You've lived your life. It's our turn now." For a heartbeat, Aurelia stood perfectly still. Then she took a slow breath. The kind that carried years of lessons. About restraint, about dignity, about knowing when to stop fighting for people who had already chosen someone else. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady, carrying through the entire ballroom. "You can keep your housewarming dreams, baby," she said. "But you'll have to build your own home, not steal mine." She turned to Malik one last time. "You have your wife now," she said. "I hope she teaches you how to stand up for something someday." And then she walked away. Past the tables, past the murmuring guests, past the cameras that followed her every step. The ballroom doors closed behind her with a deep, echoing hush. Outside, Atlanta's night air hit her face like truth. Cold, honest, unfiltered. Her cheek still stung from the slap, but the pain that settled in her chest was heavier. She stood there for a moment beneath the city lights, her reflection caught in the glass doors of the ballroom. A woman who had given everything and been left with nothing. Then, slowly, she whispered to herself, "They think they've taken something from me, but they don't know what I'm capable of." The valet hurried to her with concern, asking if she was all right. Aurelia nodded, holding her head high. "I'm fine, baby," she said, her tone gentle but strong. "I just learned something tonight." She walked to her car, silver dress gleaming under the streetlights, every step a promise to herself. This was not the end of her story. For days after the wedding, Aurelia Holt stayed quiet. The slap had left more than a mark on her cheek. It had left an echo that seemed to hum through every corner of her apartment. Even the walls, once filled with laughter and gospel music, now held a stillness she had never known before. She sat in her favorite armchair by the window of her midtown Atlanta apartment, a cup of herbal tea cooling beside her, the city glowing beneath a gray drizzle. Every few minutes she would replay that night, not because she wanted to, but because memory is cruel when pride has been wounded. She had spent 68 years building a life that didn't show off. People thought Aurelia lived modestly because she had to. In truth, she lived that way because she chose to. Her money was quiet, investments, bonds, and a paid-off building that most people didn't know she owned. When Malik was growing up, she had promised herself she'd never let him feel the kind of struggle she had endured in her 20s. She had worked 2 jobs, saving every extra dollar. The apartment, with its polished floors and warm scent of cedar, was the first thing she'd ever owned outright. It wasn't just property. It was peace. It was proof, and now, someone she'd welcomed into her family thought it was theirs to take. That thought alone made her chest tighten. It had started small. Little comments Brielle would make in the weeks leading up to the wedding. The first time, it had been about the apartment's decor. "Such an old-fashioned place," Brielle had said with a laugh, eyes scanning the framed photos on the walls. "Malik says you've had this forever. It must be falling apart by now." Aurelia had smiled politely. "It's older than you, but it's still standing strong." The younger woman had laughed, not catching the meaning. Then came the suggestions. "You should think about downsizing. Ms. Holt, or wouldn't it be safer to live somewhere with an elevator and a concierge?" Always said sweetly, wrapped in concern, but sharp enough to leave a bruise. Aurelia had ignored them at first. She knew Brielle came from a different world, one where money was meant to be displayed, not protected. She'd grown up with a father who owned a car dealership in Houston and a mother who treated charity events like red carpets. Brielle liked labels, big gestures, bigger rooms. Malik had fallen for her the moment she smiled. Aurelia could hardly blame him. Brielle was beautiful, smart, magnetic. But she was also hungry, not for love, but for status. Aurelia had seen that kind of hunger before. At first, she had tried to believe love would soften it. But now she knew better. One afternoon, about a week after the wedding, Aurelia received a call from Langston Reed, her next-door neighbor of 20 years. Langston was 70, retired from city planning, and sharp as a tack. He had always looked out for her, sometimes dropping off groceries or checking the locks at night. "Miss Holt," he said, his tone cautious, "I don't mean to alarm you, but I saw your daughter-in-law and some man outside your building yesterday. They were taking pictures of your door. Real estate-type pictures." Aurelia's hand froze midair, teacup hovering just above the table. "Pictures?" "Yes, ma'am," Langston said. "That girl's got nerve. I asked if she needed something, and she said, 'Oh, we're just getting some measurements for a possible renovation.'" "Renovation? For your home?" Aurelia set the cup down slowly. "Thank you for telling me, Langston." She hung up and sat back, her mind moving faster than her pulse. It wasn't just arrogance anymore, it was planning. That evening, she took out her old metal file box, the one labeled private, hidden behind blankets in her closet. Inside were her deeds, her investment statements, and a list of her beneficiaries. She ran her fingers over the papers and thought of Malik as a little boy, sleeping on her lap after long days, clutching her hand like it was the only safe place in the world. Now he was married to someone who wanted to take that place away. The next morning, her phone buzzed. A text from Brielle. "Hope you're well, Ms. Holt. Malik and I were thinking you could move into one of those beautiful senior communities in Sandy Springs. I saw one online, private gardens, 24/7 staff. You'd love it." Aurelia stared at the message. The heart emoji at the end stung more than the slap. It wasn't kindness. It was choreography, carefully rehearsed manipulation disguised as care. She didn't reply. Instead, she called Darius Cole, her longtime financial advisor and one of the few people who truly knew how much she had. Darius was in his early 40s, black, calm, and loyal, someone who treated her not like a client, but like an auntie. When he picked up, his voice came warm and steady. "Aunt Aurelia, you okay? I caught the wedding on social media. Looked fancy." She smiled faintly. "Fancy's one word for it. I need you to look into something for me, Darius. Quietly, of course. What's going on? I want to know if Malik or his wife have been asking questions. About my assets. My apartment. Anything with my name on it," he paused. "You think they're trying something?" "I don't think, baby. I know. Give me 2 days," he said, his voice turning serious. "I'll call you back." When she hung up, Aurelia looked around her apartment, the soft light spilling across her framed family photos, the smell of lavender from the diffuser, the quiet hum of peace she had built all by herself. She realized she was being studied, targeted, and slowly pushed out of her own home. But what Brielle and Malik didn't understand was this. Aurelia Holt had survived worse than greed. She had survived loneliness, heartbreak, and the kind of poverty that teaches you how to build power in silence. If they thought they could take from her without a fight, they were about to learn exactly who they were dealing with. 2 days later, just after sunrise poured across her kitchen counter, Aurelia Holt's phone rang. "Morning, Auntie," said Darius Cole, his tone serious. "You at home?" "I am. I'm coming by. 10 minutes. He arrived with a slim black folder and eyes that said, "Brace yourself." They sat at her round kitchen table, the same one Malik once did homework on, with 2 untouched cups of coffee. Darius opened the folder and laid out the papers. "Here's what I found. Brielle Carter is juggling 4 nearly maxed-out credit cards, 2 recent cash advances, and a personal loan she took just before the wedding. Your son Malik earns well, but he co-signed a luxury car lease for her and opened a new line of credit 8 months ago. The withdrawals have spiked in the last 90 days. Aurelia folded her arms. "Wedding costs?" "Partly," Darius said. "But there's more. Buy now, pay later furniture orders, inquiries about short-term real estate loans, and contacts with senior community brokers. They get paid when elders sell fast and move out. And Brielle's parents just refinanced their house and pulled cash from it. The timing lines up with everything." Aurelia's pulse slowed. "They're already making plans with my home." Darius nodded. "They want you out fast. They'll frame it as concern, your safety, your comfort, and push you to sign something. Joint ownership, transfer on death, or even a temporary power of attorney. If you refuse, they'll start saying you're not managing your affairs." Aurelia smiled faintly. "I've managed my affairs longer than they've been paying taxes. Predators don't care about truth," Darius said. "They care about appearances. They'll paint you as stubborn and emotional while pretending to protect you." Aurelia looked at the photo on her fridge. Malik as a boy, smiling, missing tooth, arms wrapped around her neck. "What do we do?" Darius listed the plan quickly. "Lock down every account. Add passphrases. No transfers without in-person verification. Update your will and trust today. Cut off every payment to Malik. And document what happened at the wedding. Every witness, every detail. If they try to question your capacity, we'll be ready. Aurelia's tone was firm. Do it. While Darius made calls, her phone buzzed with a text from Brielle. Hope you're well, Ms. Holt. Malik and I found a senior community in Sandy Springs. It's beautiful and safe. We can schedule your tour tomorrow. Aurelia deleted the message without replying. She didn't feed manipulation. By noon, Darius returned. Bank secured. Attorney appointment at 4. And that ballroom the wedding was in? Their final payment still isn't cleared. They're broke, Aurelia smirked. They plan to fund their next chapter with my roof. That won't happen. That evening, Malik finally called. Ma, how you doing? He asked carefully. I'm fine, she said flatly. Good. Listen, Brielle didn't mean what happened at the wedding. She's just under pressure. The wedding cost more than expected and… Aurelia cut in. She slapped me in public, Malik. That's not pressure. That's character, he sighed. You're taking it too personally. We've been thinking about your safety, Ma. The stairs aren't ideal. We found a place with nurses and security. Brielle's uncle can help you sell your apartment fast. I'm not moving, she said calmly. He paused. Ma, you're being unreasonable. You can't stay alone forever. This is for your own good. I'm not your burden, and I'm not your bank, Malik's tone hardened. If you won't think about what's best, we might need help from professionals who can. Aurelia's voice turned cold. The last people who tried to control me wore badges. They failed. So will you, he hesitated. We'll talk later. I'll be ready, she said, hanging up. She stood at her window, watching the lights of Midtown flicker against the glass. Her home was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator, the clock ticking steady, a piece she'd built from nothing. The doorbell rang. Langston Reed stood outside holding a casserole. Heard voices. You okay? Better than yesterday, she smiled. Good. My sister's recipe. Food helps you think. Come in. They ate together while she explained just enough. Langston frowned. People forget elders have teeth. You need witnesses? I'll sign anything. That woman was here this morning with a man, taking photos of your door again. Aurelia shook her head. They're staging my exit before I've left. After he left, she cleaned the dishes, checked the locks twice, and finally sat down with a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. Her phone buzzed again, this time a calendar invite from Brielle. Family meeting, Magnolia Grand Ballroom, Private Salon B. Attendees, Brielle Carter, Malik Holt, Brielle's parents. No message. No question. Just an order. Aurelia pressed accept. Then she called Darius. Bring your suit, she said. And bring the receipts. Because if they wanted another public show, this time Aurelia Holt was going to write the ending. The Magnolia Grand Ballroom looked different in daylight, colder, stripped of its glitter. The chandeliers that once shimmered like promise now felt like interrogation lights. Aurelia Holt walked in wearing a navy blue suit and low heels that clicked against the marble floor with unshaken rhythm. Every step was deliberate, every breath under control. At the far end of the room sat Brielle Carter, her parents, and Malik Holt. They were dressed like they'd come for a photo shoot rather than a conversation. A glass carafe of lemon water sat between them, condensation sliding down the sides. Brielle crossed one leg over the other, perfectly composed, except for the tight twitch in her jaw. Aurelia didn't bother to sit right away. Morning, she said calmly, her voice carrying across the echoing space. Brielle's mother, Denise Carter, smiled too widely. Aurelia, sweetheart, we're so glad you could make it. We wanted to have an open, honest talk about next steps. Next steps for who? Aurelia asked, finally taking a seat. Denise exchanged a look with her husband, Roland Carter, a man with a smile made for persuasion. For everyone's peace of mind, he said. Brielle and Malik have a lot on their plate, and they're concerned about you living alone. You've had some emotional outbursts lately. People might misunderstand that as instability. Aurelia leaned back slightly, folding her hands. Instability? Brielle's tone softened in mock concern. Ms. Holt, no one's accusing you of anything. We just want to help you simplify your life. The apartment is too big for one person, and the building doesn't have good safety measures. You could fall or get slapped again. Aurelia interrupted, her eyes never leaving Brielle's. The younger woman blinked, composure cracking for a moment. "That was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "No," Aurelia said evenly. "That was clarity. You just didn't like how it looked on camera." Malik shifted uncomfortably, but before he could speak, Roland slid a document folder across the table. "This is just paperwork to make things easier," he said smoothly. "It allows Malik to manage your property and finances on your behalf. Temporarily, of course. You'll still have full access, but it takes pressure off you." Aurelia looked at the folder like it was something unclean. "So this gives my son and his wife control over everything I own?" Roland smiled. "It gives them authority to protect your interests." "By selling my home?" "That's not the intent," Denise said sweetly. "But yes, if needed, they could make those decisions quickly for your benefit." Aurelia tilted her head. "My benefit," she looked at Malik, who finally met her eyes. His face was pale, strained between guilt and cowardice. "Ma, it's just paperwork," he said quietly. "We want to make sure you're safe and taken care of." Her voice dropped low, slow, and lethal. "Safe from who, Malik? The world? Or from your wife's impatience?" Brielle inhaled sharply. "You're being unfair, am I?" Aurelia asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, the only people threatening my peace are sitting at this table." Darius, who had been silent until now, stepped forward and placed his briefcase on the table. His charcoal suit looked sharper than the Carters' fake smiles. "Mrs. Holt invited me as her representative," he said. "And before anyone continues, I want to make sure this discussion is fully documented." He pressed record on his phone. The mood in the room shifted instantly. Denise's smile vanished. Roland sat straighter. Brielle shot Malik a quick, panicked look. Darius opened his folder. "I've reviewed the document you're trying to get Mrs. Holt to sign. It's a durable power of attorney, not temporary. It would grant you full control of her assets, including real estate, investments, and bank accounts. You would also have the right to make medical and housing decisions on her behalf. In legal terms, this would render her effectively powerless," Denise sputtered. "That's not what we—" "It's exactly what this is," Darius said firmly. "And coercing a senior into signing it, especially after public humiliation and emotional distress, could be classified as elder financial abuse under Georgia law." The room went dead silent. Aurelia smiled faintly. "Y'all really should have done your homework before inviting me to a setup." Brielle stood, voice shaking. "You can't accuse us of that." "I'm not accusing," Aurelia said. "I'm observing." She turned to Malik again, her expression soft but heavy. "You could have stopped this, baby. You could have told me you didn't know about their plan. But you didn't. You let it happen. That's the part that hurts." Malik's lips parted, but no words came. Aurelia stood. "This meeting's over." Darius closed his folder. "I'll be in touch with your lawyers," he said to the Carters, calm as a judge. As Aurelia and Darius walked toward the doors, Brielle's voice rose behind them, desperate now. "You'll regret this, Ms. Holt. We were trying to help you." Aurelia turned once, her tone calm and cutting. "Baby, the day I need your kind of help, I'll stop breathing." The ballroom doors opened, sunlight pouring in like deliverance. The echo of her heels followed her out, each step reclaiming something that had been stolen, her authority, her pride, her peace. Outside, she inhaled the crisp Atlanta air. Darius handed her a small envelope. Documents signed, protections locked, account sealed. "You were right to call me," he said. "I'm not done yet," she replied. They wanted a show. I'm going to give them one they'll never forget. As she walked away from the Magnolia Grand Ballroom, her reflection shimmered briefly in the glass, not of a victim, but of a woman who had decided that this time, the battle would be fought on her terms. That night, Atlanta's sky was a deep indigo bruise. The city pulsed with its usual noise, cars whispering over wet pavement, neon lights spilling into puddles, but inside Aurelia Holt's apartment, everything was silent except for the rhythmic ticking of the clock above her kitchen counter. She sat in her armchair, still in the navy suit she'd worn to the ambush, Her phone lay face down on the table beside her, the glow of unread messages bleeding through the edges. She didn't need to check to know who they were from. Malik, Brielle, maybe even one of the Carters trying to spin their own story. The silence between those messages was its own confession. Darius had dropped her off hours ago. Before leaving, he'd said quietly, "They'll double down, Auntie. People like that don't retreat. They regroup." He was right. She could already feel it, the storm gathering just beyond the calm. Aurelia stood, unbuttoned her blazer, and walked toward her bookshelf. Behind the row of old gospel vinyls and family photo albums sat a black lockbox. She pulled it out, unlocked it, and laid its contents across the dining table. Property deeds, trust statements, tax receipts, and handwritten notes from Malik's childhood. At the center of it all was the apartment deed. She touched it gently, tracing her own name written in neat blue ink. Aurelia Holt, sole owner. Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from grief. How had it come to this? Her own son willing to strip her of the very foundation she'd built for him. She sat down and let herself remember. The long nights she'd worked cleaning offices downtown after her nursing shifts, the day she'd made the final payment on the apartment, the first time Malik had said, "Ma, one day I'll take care of you." He had meant it back then. But people change when the wrong kind of love whispers the right kind of lies. Aurelia took a slow breath and reached for her phone. She scrolled to Darius Cole's name and pressed call. He answered on the first ring. "Auntie, I figured you'd call." "Darius, it's time," she said. Her voice was steady, resolute. "Time for what?" "For me to stop pretending I don't see what's in front of me." "I'm listening. I want everything ready. Full audit of all accounts. Immediate revocation of any beneficiary rights Malik holds, and a restructuring of my estate plan. The new trust goes to people who actually value elders. Maybe a foundation, something for women who've been pushed aside by their own families." Darius nodded slowly. "That's a powerful move. It's the only one left." He hesitated. "You sure about cutting him off completely?" "There's no coming back from that." She smiled faintly, though he couldn't see it. He already walked away. "I'm just closing the door behind him." Aurelia looked out her window, the city lights shimmering against the glass. "Also, Darius, I need you to help me plan something." "Something?" She turned from the window, her reflection looking stronger than it had in years. "If they wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone, then I'll let them watch me reclaim my name the same way. In front of everyone. I'm not hiding in silence while they gossip. I'm going to make sure every single person who clapped at that wedding sees exactly who they tried to destroy." He chuckled softly. "You're talking about a public showdown." "I'm talking about truth," Aurelia replied. "And I want it delivered with receipts, witnesses, and grace sharp enough to cut." Darius's tone turned serious. "If you're doing this, I'll be there. Just say when." "Soon," she said. "And make sure the venue manager gets paid from my account. But not for them. I want a reservation at that same ballroom for something else." "What kind of something else?" "A presentation," Aurelia said. "A celebration, actually. The night I take back everything they tried to claim." When the call ended, she spent the next hour sealing envelopes, labeling files, and burning the last remaining copy of an old will. The paper curled and blackened in the ashtray, smoke curling toward the ceiling like a quiet benediction. She opened her notebook and began writing in looping, deliberate pen strokes, a letter addressed to Malik Holt, one he wouldn't see until it was far too late to change anything. "My son, you mistook my patience for weakness. You mistook my love for permission. I raised you to build, not to take. But you chose easy hands over honest ones. So from now on, the name Holt will still mean something. Just not because of you." Aurelia set the pen down, folded the letter, and slid it into an envelope. Then she poured herself a glass of red wine, turned off the lights, and stood by the window again. Outside, the city was alive, the hum of engines, the flicker of billboards, the faraway sound of a saxophone playing on Peachtree Street. Somewhere beneath it all, she felt peace begin to settle in her bones. They had made her bleed in public, but she would make them learn in the same light. The Magnolia Grand Ballroom glittered again. But this time the occasion wasn't a wedding, it was a reckoning. Rows of gold chairs faced the stage, where a podium gleamed under soft amber lights. Guests filled the space with whispers, curious about the Holt family appreciation dinner invitation that had arrived in thick ivory envelopes a week earlier. Aurelia Holt entered through the main doors wearing a deep emerald gown, simple but commanding. Her silver hair framed her face like a crown, and the quiet confidence in her stride silenced the murmurs around her. Every person who had witnessed her humiliation weeks earlier was here again, drawn by curiosity, guilt, or gossip. Malik Holt and Brielle Carter arrived fashionably late, hand in hand, both dressed to impress. Their smiles were camera-ready, but their eyes betrayed a hint of unease. They hadn't seen Aurelia since the family meeting. Malik assumed his mother had calmed down. Brielle assumed the old woman had learned her lesson. They were both wrong. Aurelia stood near the podium as Darius Cole, dressed in a dark tailored suit, stepped forward to greet the guests. "Good evening, everyone," he began, voice smooth, measured. "Thank you for joining us to honor a woman whose integrity and grace have inspired so many. Tonight we recognize Mrs. Aurelia Holt, not just as a mother, but as a pillar of this community." The applause was polite, hesitant, unsure of where this was going. Aurelia smiled faintly, then took the microphone. "Thank you, Darius. And thank you all for coming. Some of you were here a few weeks ago, at a different kind of celebration, one that ended differently." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd, the kind people use when they don't know if it's safe to laugh. "I left that night humiliated," Aurelia continued, "not because of a mistake, but because of a choice. Someone else's choice to take from me what I worked my whole life to build." Brielle shifted in her seat. Malik glanced at her, uneasy. Aurelia's tone remained calm, controlled. "That evening, I was asked, no, demanded, to hand over the keys to my home. I was told I was too old to live alone, too fragile to manage my affairs, too stubborn to understand what was best for me." Her eyes locked on Malik and Brielle. "And I learned that love, when poisoned by greed, can turn family into strangers." The room went silent. Darius stepped up beside her, opening a folder and setting a small stack of papers on the podium. "Mrs. Holt asked me to handle her estate review in front of witnesses," he said. "With her permission, I'll read a few statements." Aurelia nodded. He cleared his throat. "As of this morning, all financial accounts under Mrs. Holt's name have been consolidated and secured. Any co-signing privileges or secondary access linked to her son, Malik Holt, have been revoked." Gasps rippled through the audience. Malik stiffened. "Additionally," Darius continued, "Mrs. Holt has officially withdrawn as guarantor on the Carter-Holt line of credit used to finance last month's wedding, meaning the remaining balance is now the responsibility of Mr. and Mrs. Holt." A murmur broke out, sharp, scandalized. Cameras lifted discreetly. Darius wasn't done. "Furthermore, Mrs. Holt has established a new foundation, the Holt Initiative, dedicated to protecting seniors from financial abuse and coercion. The seed funding, previously intended for her son's future business, now belongs entirely to that foundation." Brielle's face drained of color. "You can't do that!" she burst out. Aurelia looked at her calmly. "I already did." Malik rose from his seat, voice trembling. "Ma, this isn't fair. You're doing this out of anger." "No," Aurelia said, her tone low but cutting. "I'm doing it out of clarity. You showed me who you were, Malik. Now I'm just responding accordingly." Darius stepped aside, letting Aurelia face the crowd fully. "I spent my life working for everything I own," she said. "When I had nothing, I learned to make peace with struggle. But when I finally had something, I learned the cost of trust. I was slapped in front of a room full of witnesses, and my own son said nothing. That silence told me more about my worth to him than any words ever could." A single tear escaped down her cheek. Not weakness, but release. "So tonight, I take back my name, my dignity, and my peace. And for every elder who's ever been made to feel small or disposable, this one's for you." The audience rose in applause, some awkwardly, some genuinely moved. The ballroom filled with the sound of redemption. As Aurelia stepped away from the podium, the venue manager, Mr. Benton, approached Brielle discreetly. "Ma'am, we still haven't received final payment for the wedding balance. Since Mrs. Holt withdrew her guarantee, we'll need full settlement tonight." Brielle's expression twisted, panic flashing across her face. Malik tried to argue, but Benton's tone stayed professional. "Company policy. You'll need to resolve it before you leave." All around them, guests watched, phones raised, whispers spreading like wildfire. Aurelia didn't look back. She walked through the ballroom with Darius by her side, chin high, the emerald gown sweeping behind her like a banner of quiet victory. The same chandeliers that had witnessed her humiliation now lit her triumph. Outside, the air felt lighter. She looked up at the Atlanta skyline and exhaled. "That was for every woman who's ever had to smile through betrayal," she said softly. Darius smiled. "And every man who will think twice before underestimating her again." They walked toward her car as the ballroom doors closed behind them, sealing the end of one story and the beginning of Aurelia Holt's legacy. The next morning, the video of Aurelia Holt's speech flooded the internet. Clips from the Magnolia Grand Ballroom spread across social media, captioned with phrases like "elder justice in action" and "mother outsmarts greedy newlyweds." Within 24 hours, the story was on every Atlanta news channel. In the video, Aurelia looked regal, calm, sharp, untouchable. Her words about dignity and betrayal hit millions of viewers like gospel. What had begun as a family humiliation had transformed into a movement. By noon, reporters camped outside her building. Cameramen waited near her front steps, hoping for a quote. Aurelia, dressed in a cream blouse and gold earrings, opened the door with poise. "No comments today," she said kindly. "Just a good morning." Inside, the phone rang nonstop. News producers, advocacy groups, old friends, even strangers wanting to thank her for standing up. One message came from a law firm offering to partner with her foundation, another from a women's organization wanting her to speak at their conference. But the call she had been expecting came mid-afternoon. "Ma." She didn't respond immediately. She let his voice linger for a moment, heavy with guilt. "Malik," she said finally, her tone calm. "I figured I'd hear from you once the cameras started rolling. Why did you do this?" He demanded. "You embarrassed us in front of the whole city." "I corrected a lie," Aurelia replied. Embarrassment was optional. He sighed harshly. "Brielle can't go anywhere without people whispering. Her business partners are backing out." "You've ruined her reputation." Aurelia almost laughed. "Brielle ruined her own reputation when she put her hands on me. The world just happened to be watching." He hesitated. "You didn't have to go public like that. You could have handled it privately." "You wanted my silence, Malik. That's what you and your wife counted on. That I'd be too ashamed to fight back. You're my son, but I won't let you make me invisible." He tried to steady his tone. "You're angry, I get it. But we can fix this. Reverse the transfers, remove the lawyers, and we'll make it right. You can even move in with us if—" She cut him off. "Enough!" The sharpness in her voice startled him. "You don't get to fix what you destroyed. I trusted you with my name, my legacy, and my love. You sold all three for convenience." He went quiet. "I've amended my will," she continued. "You're no longer a beneficiary. Everything I own now belongs to the Holt Initiative. My wealth will protect those who still remember what respect looks like." He exhaled, disbelief turning into panic. "Ma, you're serious. I'm done mistaking love for weakness. You're choosing strangers over your own son?" "No," she said softly. "I'm choosing peace over pain." He didn't respond. The line stayed open, filled with the static of everything left unsaid. The boy he once was, the man he'd become, and the mother he had lost by his own doing. When the silence became unbearable, he muttered, "You'll regret this." "I already did," she replied, and ended the call. That evening, Aurelia turned on the TV. The evening news anchor, Kiana Brooks, was reporting live from outside the Magnolia Grand Ballroom. The headline read, Elder Abuse Awareness Rises After Holt Family Scandal. Kiana's voice filled the room. Viewers across Georgia are calling Aurelia Holt a symbol of empowerment after she confronted her son and daughter-in-law for attempted financial exploitation. Legal experts confirm that Mrs. Holt's foundation, funded entirely from her own estate, has already received national attention. Aurelia smiled faintly. She hadn't wanted fame, only justice. But sometimes justice needed a spotlight. Her doorbell rang. When she opened it, Langston Reed stood there holding a grocery bag. "Saw the news," he said, grinning. "Brought you some collard greens and peach cobbler. Figured you might need something sweet after all that bitter," Aurelia chuckled. "You always know what to bring." As they sat at her table eating dinner, the phone kept buzzing. Langston nodded toward it. "You gonna answer?" "No," she said, setting the phone aside. "If it's important, it can wait." Later, after he left, Aurelia stepped onto her balcony. The city glowed beneath her, proud, loud, alive. She looked up at the sky, where the stars were faint but steady. Behind her, the news replayed her speech from the night before. Her own voice filled the quiet. "I take back my name, my dignity, and my peace." It echoed through the room like a benediction. For the first time in years, Aurelia Holt slept soundly. No guilt, no worry, no unfinished sentences. The boy she had raised was gone, but the woman she had become stood unshaken. Tomorrow, she would begin building the foundation. Tonight, she simply let herself breathe. The storm that followed Aurelia Holt's public reckoning spread faster than even she expected. Within 72 hours, headlines carried her name from Atlanta to Washington. Elderly woman outsmarts greedy heirs. Aurelia Holt sparks movement for senior protection. Her speech had become a rallying cry. Television hosts debated her courage, social media users called her a queen, and community leaders reached out to partner with her new foundation. But for Malik and Brielle, life was unraveling. Their phones wouldn't stop ringing, but none of the calls were congratulatory. Brielle's boutique lost 2 major suppliers overnight, citing brand image concerns. Malik's firm placed him on administrative leave while they reviewed recent media coverage. The final blow came 3 days later, in a crisp white envelope taped to their condo door, a notice of eviction. Brielle read it twice, her manicured hands shaking. "This can't be real." Malik grabbed it from her, scanning the words that confirmed the nightmare. Their rent hadn't been paid in 2 months, funds they thought Aurelia's gift transfers would cover. Those transfers were now frozen. "I told you she wouldn't stay quiet," Malik muttered. "You said she wouldn't dare," Brielle snapped. "You promised she'd back down." "She's my mother," he said, rubbing his temples. "I thought she'd forgive me," Brielle laughed bitterly. "Your mother just turned herself into the face of elder justice." "Forgive you?" "She's building a whole movement out of your mistakes." Later that night, the couple appeared on a small local podcast, hoping to spin the story. They painted Aurelia as confused, vindictive, misled by her advisor. But the comments section tore them apart. Viewers reposted videos of Brielle's slap, screenshots of her texts about renovating the apartment, and clips of Malik's silence. One comment summed up the internet's verdict. She built him. She fed him. She clothed him. And he still sold her piece for a wedding photo. Meanwhile, Aurelia was busy. Her apartment had transformed into the first working office of the Holt Initiative. A young volunteer team, college students, retired teachers, and advocates, worked from laptops around her dining table. Folders labeled case files and media requests covered the sideboard. Aurelia reviewed paperwork while sipping tea. "We're setting up the hotline this week," she told Carmen Okafor, the foundation's program coordinator. "Every call we answer could be someone like me, someone being silenced by their own family." Carmen smiled. "You've started something, Mrs. Holt. People feel seen again." The doorbell rang. Langston Reed stood there holding a newspaper. "They're suing you," he said. Aurelia took the paper. The headline read, "Couple accuses elder of defamation and mental incompetence." She exhaled slowly. So they finally decided to make it official. "They're claiming you're unstable," Langston said, "trying to push a mental evaluation order." "Of course they are," Aurelia replied calmly. "That's the last card people like them play when they've run out of lies." She called Darius Cole, who arrived within the hour, briefcase in hand and confidence radiating. "Let them try," he said. "We have the recordings, the witnesses, the documents. The moment they file, we'll counter with elder abuse and defamation. The courts won't tolerate this," Aurelia smiled slightly. "They want another show? I'll give them one." Over the next week, the case gained national coverage. News anchors dissected every angle. Advocacy groups rallied behind Aurelia. And talk shows framed her as a symbol of strength in a world that forgets its elders. The Carters' lawsuit backfired spectacularly. The courtroom scenes were brutal for Malik and Brielle. Witnesses testified about their manipulation, their attempts to seize control, their humiliation tactics. Even the ballroom manager, Mr. Benton, spoke under oath. "She was calm, respectful, composed," he said of Aurelia. "They were the ones yelling." When the footage of the slap was played before the court, the silence that followed was damning. The judge dismissed their claim immediately. Then, in a twist no one saw coming, he fined them for filing a frivolous lawsuit and ordered community service through the Holt Initiative. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Aurelia. She stood at the top of the steps in a tailored white coat, her silver curls catching the afternoon light. Cameras flashed, but her voice remained measured. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm awake. This isn't revenge, it's restoration. Every senior deserves the right to live with dignity, without fear, without manipulation. My story isn't just mine anymore. It belongs to all of us." The crowd cheered as she walked away, her foundation volunteers forming a small circle around her. That night, her face appeared on national TV again. The segment ended with a new title beneath her image, Aurelia Holt, the woman who fought back. Inside her apartment, she stood at the window with a quiet smile. The city lights glowed, steady and unbothered. She whispered to herself, "They tried to break me in public, and I healed in the same light." The following weeks turned Aurelia Holt into something larger than she ever intended. A national figure, a voice for those who had been silenced. News anchors quoted her speech like scripture. Morning shows invited her to share her story of strength, and talk show hosts called her the grandmother of justice. Everywhere she went, people stopped her, at the grocery store, at the church, even at the park, just to say, "You gave me courage." For the first time in her life, Aurelia understood the weight of her own influence, but behind all the praise, a storm still brewed in court. The Carters had filed an appeal, desperate to reclaim what they'd lost. Their attorney argued that Aurelia had defamed them publicly and that her mental state had been manipulated by her advisor. It was a last attempt at redemption, and it would be their undoing. The courtroom was packed that morning. Reporters filled the benches, their cameras flashing every time Aurelia moved. She arrived in a charcoal gray suit, pearls at her throat, and a quiet confidence that commanded the room. Across the aisle sat Malik and Brielle, their faces pale and drawn. The shine they once flaunted had dulled. They looked like two people who had built their entire world on borrowed light and were now standing in darkness. When Darius Cole rose to speak, the room fell silent. "Your Honor," he began, "this is not a case about property. It's about power. The kind of power people think they have over those they believe are too old to fight back. My client didn't defame anyone. She defended herself in public after being attacked in public. That's not defamation. That's survival." He paused, letting the words settle. "And as for claims of mental incompetence, Mrs. Holt's actions demonstrate not confusion, but clarity." She didn't lash out. She executed a plan, one step at a time within the law. What we have here is not a victim of age, but a masterclass in strength. A murmur of approval rippled through the audience. Then Darius pressed a button on his tablet, and the ballroom footage appeared on the courtroom screens. Brielle's slap, Malik's silence, Aurelia's composure, Every second played out in front of the judge. When it ended, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the air conditioner. The judge leaned forward, his voice even but firm. "Mrs. Holt," he said, "you've shown remarkable grace and restraint under extraordinary circumstances. The court finds no merit in the plaintiff's claims. This appeal is denied with prejudice. Furthermore, court costs and damages will be awarded to Mrs. Holt." The gavel struck. It was over. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps as Aurelia exited, but she didn't rush. Cameras flashed as she spoke calmly into the microphones. "I didn't fight to humiliate anyone," she said. "I fought to remind people like me, our elders, our mothers, our fathers, that silence is not safety. We deserve protection, not pity." A reporter called out, "Mrs. Holt, what happens now?" Aurelia smiled. "Now we build." That evening, she appeared live on Kiana Brooks's national talk show, Stories of a Lifetime. The studio lights gleamed softly on her silver curls as Kiana leaned forward, admiration in her eyes. "Mrs. Holt, what gave you the courage to stand up when so many wouldn't?" Aurelia thought for a moment. "Because fear ages faster than we do," she said. "If I had stayed quiet, I'd have become a ghost in my own life. I chose to live instead," the audience applauded. Kiana smiled. "And what would you say to others in your situation?" "Don't hand your peace to people who haven't earned your trust," Aurelia said simply. "Protect your name, your home, your mind. And remember, family isn't blood, it's behavior." When the segment ended, the producers surprised her with a short montage. Photos of elders across the country holding signs that read, "Holt Initiative. Stand with Aurelia, or protect our seniors." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from purpose. Back in Atlanta, the Holt Initiative office received thousands of emails from across the country. Stories from seniors who had been scammed, abandoned, or silenced. Aurelia spent hours reading them, replying to as many as she could. Each story reminded her that she hadn't just reclaimed her own dignity, she had opened a door for countless others. One night, she stood by her window, watching the city glow. The reflection in the glass no longer showed the woman who had been slapped in front of strangers. It showed a woman reborn, calm, powerful, and whole. She whispered into the quiet, "You took my silence, and I turned it into a voice that echoes." And in that moment, Aurelia Holt didn't just win her case. She became the face of every elder who had ever been underestimated, proof that strength doesn't fade with age. It just becomes unstoppable. 2 years later, Atlanta had changed, or maybe it was just Aurelia Holt who had. The city moved the same way it always did, fast, loud, relentless, but she no longer felt like she was chasing it. She had found her rhythm again, one built on purpose instead of pain. The Holt Initiative Foundation had grown into a national movement. What began at her dining table now filled an entire office building downtown. Its logo, a silver key wrapped in golden hands, etched proudly on the glass doors. The foundation's programs had rescued hundreds of seniors from predatory relatives and shady financial schemes. Local universities invited her to speak on empowerment and ethics. Lawmakers in Georgia had even passed the Elder Protection and Accountability Act, a bill her testimony helped shape. Aurelia didn't brag about it. She just smiled whenever she saw the ripple her story had made. That morning, she walked through the foundation's headquarters in a soft beige suit and pearls. The young interns greeted her like family. "Morning, Ms. Holt," one called out. "You've got Channel 8 here for an interview at 11. "Let them wait 5 minutes," she said with a wink. "Patience builds character." In her office, the walls were lined with framed photos, moments that told the story of her second life. There was one of her on stage at a conference beside Kiana Brooks, another of her cutting the ribbon at the foundation's opening. But the photo that meant the most sat on her desk. Her late husband holding baby Malik. She touched it softly every morning before beginning her day. Sometimes the ache still came, a quiet whisper in her chest when she thought of the son she'd lost. Not to death, but to choice. He had never called again after the trial. She had sent him a letter, a simple, honest one, but it had never been returned or acknowledged. At first, that silence had hurt. Now it was simply part of the peace she'd earned. Around noon, Carmen Okafor, her programs director, entered with a file. "We just received approval for the new outreach centers," she said, excitement in her voice. "One in Savannah, one in Birmingham. The Holt initiative's expanding again." Aurelia smiled. "Then it's time to find more people who forgot how strong they are." Later that afternoon, she attended a community event at Ebenezer Church, where a group of seniors gathered for lunch and laughter. When she walked in, the room erupted into applause. "Ms. Holt, we love you!" Someone shouted. She raised her hands, laughing. "Love is mutual, baby. I'm just here to make sure y'all keep what's yours." After the speeches and hugs, she sat with a woman named Mrs. Daniels, who clutched her hand and whispered, "You don't know what you've done for us. I was ready to give up my house to my nephew, but after seeing you on TV, I said, 'Not today.'" Aurelia squeezed her hand gently. "Good, keep your home. Keep your power. You've earned both." When the event ended, Aurelia stepped outside. The afternoon sun washed the church steps in gold, and a soft breeze carried the faint sound of a choir practicing inside. She closed her eyes, letting it settle over her like grace. As she walked to her car, a young reporter caught up to her. "Mrs. Holt, one last question," he said breathlessly. "After everything you've accomplished, the lawsuits, the foundation, the national recognition, what do you want people to remember about you?" Aurelia paused, her silver curls glinting in the sunlight. "I want them to remember that I didn't win because I was strong," she said. "I became strong because I refused to lose." The reporter smiled, his camera light blinking red. "That's powerful." "Powerful is what happens when you stop asking for permission to exist," she replied. That evening, back in her apartment, Aurelia lit a single candle and sat by the window, the same spot where she had once wept after being slapped and humiliated. Now that moment felt like a lifetime ago. She had turned her heartbreak into history, her silence into a legacy. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I saw the interview. I'm proud of you." Malik Aurelia stared at the screen for a long moment, tears threatening to rise. She typed only 2 words back. "I forgive you." Then she set the phone down, leaned back, and looked out at the Atlanta skyline. The city lights blinked like 1,000 blessings, and somewhere far below, her foundation's sign glowed against the night, a silver key wrapped in golden hands. She smiled softly and whispered, "It was never about losing a home. It was about finding myself. For the first time in years, the world outside and the world within her were both at peace, and Aurelia Holt, the woman they tried to silence, became the living proof that dignity, once reclaimed, never fades.